I believe I'm live. Hello, everyone. We're about to have some good old fun here. We got a lot of beats to review. Let me quickly close this. I'll leave the door open. How's it going, guys? We've got the homie Nicked in here. We've got Harmiter in here as well. Hope you guys are doing well. Harmiter, I see you really enjoyed that album that the sample came from. I definitely did too. It's such a unique exploration of so many different genres. Super awesome, super forward thinking. Just ran that song randomly stumbled upon me in the the Spotify Discover section, and I was like, what the hell is this? I don't know what I'm listening to. The synth work on that track is just so awesome, and all the additional acoustic strings and the plucked harps and stuff, really awesome. By the way, let me know if my mic is working. We'll do our usual tests. We'll have a few new people here, a few new course members. So welcome aboard. We do this stream every 2 weeks where you guys submit your beats, and I just go one by one, try to get through as many as I can. We usually do it around 2 hours, and I try to fit in as many beats as I can and give you guys feedback on your beats. I couldn't find the rest of the album. It was an interesting sound though. Do you have Spotify? It should be, the rest of the album is on Spotify, I believe. Not what I normally listen to. Nice to hear something new. Yeah, it's such a, I don't even know what genre that would be categorized under. So many of the different songs on the album just jump around in terms of what genre that could be even classified as. But yeah, please let me know if my mic sounds good. The levels are sounding good. I'll move up in the camera a little bit. We got that ray of sunshine behind me. That looks very beautiful, very captivating there. Working good. This is recreational NDE. Quato is alive. So the mic's sounding good. Let's do a audio test in that case. Let me know if the audio comes through well also. So let me know if the audio came through, and if so, we'll be jumping right in. Pseudo 310's in here as well. BG, mic is sounding good. Yeah, let me know if that audio came through. If so, we'll start reviewing your submissions here, everyone. Yeah, like I was saying, I know some of you guys are new, so every 2 weeks we do a nice little challenge here. I go through and listen to all you guys' beats. We will keep it pretty open the first two here. So this one's just use the sample. The next challenge, if you go into tab 2 down here, is just free challenge, make a good beat, do whatever you want. But then going forward, I'll start to really constrict and add a lot of stipulations in terms of BPM and different sounds that you can't use and that type of stuff, just to really sort of push you and get you guys thinking about different techniques and different ideas and different approaches. Audio is good. All right, so let's jump right in. And while we do the reviews here, feel free to share your opinions on the beats as well. Keep it constructive, obviously. And Serious Dwick is in here. How's it going? So yeah, keep it constructive and just share your opinions on what you like, what you don't like, similar to what we do in the feedback section of the course. And because there's sometimes you guys pick up on things that I don't really catch, and you guys have great points in terms of small little things that I might just overlook or overhear. So yeah, your guys' input's always valuable as well. Erica Swell is in here as well. So let's jump right into it by starting with Deleg's beat here. Let's see what Deleg came up with. right, that was Deleg with his beat called Guidance. Let's highlight Deleg. His beat has been listened to. Let's see what you guys are saying about this. Gigi's in here as well. How's it going, Gigi? Vibes. This is so good. Great use of filters. That's a great point. The homie Nect. I like the bass and the snare a lot. Very chill sound, but has the same energy. But has energy at the same time. Pretty unique to my ears. So yeah, I felt the very same way about the beat here. Love the sample flip and the way he sort of used or contorted the sample. He created a very nice consistent layer throughout the beat and used it as almost like a pad or a drone, with like a lot of small little cool details like the sort of harp and the strings in there, sort of plucking away in the back. Great drum work as well, to the point that the homie Nick mentioned. I really liked the drum programming and the also drum selection. So as I mentioned, the sample sort of used a more consistent layer, and it sounded like the bass in the beat was used as the more melodic component that added a lot of the movement into the beat. And just like Quado mentioned there, great use of filters. There were a lot of good arrangement ideas in this beat, a lot of like use of filters, switch ups, and like the beat came in and out and whatnot. What I would have liked with this beat was that Red Octane, how's it going? This is the first beat you just heard here, so we're just on beat number 1. What I would have liked here is it felt like the arrangement and the structure itself was a bit random at times. I didn't really get a good sense of, okay, this is where the hook is, this is where the verse is, and it felt like a sort of random semblance of different sort of sections that had different effects put onto them. So I would have liked something a little bit more structured. It definitely sounded like all the pieces in this beat were there. A lot of great arrangement ideas were in this beat as well, but using them in a more sort of more deliberate way is a good way of putting it. Would have been a little bit nicer. But yeah, like I mentioned, a great sample flip here. All the pieces of this beat were there. Just a little bit more structuring for the actual beat itself would have been nice. But yeah, great job, Deleg. Is Deleg in here? I don't think Deleg is in here. So let's jump in to recreational NDE. Let's listen to your beat here. All right, that was NDE's beat there, or should I say recreational NDE. Let me know what NDE stands for. Is That's some sort of secret. Let's see here. Good to see some new names in here. Welcome to all the new members. I agree. It is good to see some new fresh blood in here. Love hearing all the extra ear candy. Sound selection is dope. Oh, sick. I like those. Are those bongos? That made me smile. The percussion in general sounds great to me, for sure. So yeah, with my takeaway with this beat, I think first off, great use of the sample here. So one of the things that a lot of producers sort of feel compelled to do when they sample is just take an excessive amount of chops, go overboard, use tons of like micro chops to create something absurdly like complex but like nonsensical at the same time. And I think you did a great job of just being very this is good design. Basically you basically use like those two notes from the sample and play them back and forth just to create like a 2-note progression with the sample, and then you used your bass to sort of create a little bit more musicality. So you didn't go overboard, you didn't sort of create a million chops, which is exactly what I sort of want to see a lot of times. As I mentioned in the course, a lot of times, you know, people think complexity is the way to quality, and I just think balance is the way to quality, more so than anything. And I think this beat here shows a good understanding of that concept. There's just a lot of good balance in this beat. I really especially love the end as well. So when you wanted to sort of build up the beat a little bit, you found more complex parts of the sample that had a little bit more going on, that had like the additional synths that came in. And I think there's like a piano at some point. So great control with the sample there. It sounded very fluid. Near-death experience. Is that what it is? That's frightening, man. One thing that I will say, I don't want to point out there, I guess a lot of people enjoyed the extra little percussive sounds. To me, they sounded a little bit, I guess, off in a way, a little bit random. Red Bunny, how's it going? So with the sample itself, it has like this very ethereal quality, a lot of like very sort of lush sounds. And the sounds that you sort of added in didn't really feel like they fit to a degree, just by the virtue of, you know, sort of a little bit more novel sounds on top. I'm not sure whether like maybe you struggle with learning how to add your own sounds into a beat and have it sort of fit a little bit more. There are definitely parts in the course where I talk about that, and on my YouTube page I alluded to like 12 very common sounds that you can add into your beats and how to sort of think about their characteristics and getting them to fit. So I think that Deleg is in here. How's it going? So yeah, I think the sort of extra sounds that you added in, they felt a little bit novel, a little bit random. I would have liked to hear you use, you know, actual more musical instruments instead of sort of one shots that are a little bit more wacky and whatnot. So yeah, I think great job with the sample flip. Great job of using it and creating a well put together beat. I think just the extra layer on top of like the small little details that you decided to add in, I would have liked it to be a little bit more flush and a little bit more congruent with the actual beat idea, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. Those are my exact problems. I'll work on that. Yeah, it's definitely hard, especially with sampling, figuring out how to find sounds that pair with the sample that actually work. And a lot of the times, like I mentioned in the course, I think it's in the second section of the updated area that you're, that's just the course for you. I talk about how I sort of added the sounds into the sampled beat that I made, and just thinking about, you know, the usual sound qualities of like what's the frequency my sample takes up, what's open, what stereo spaces my sample take up and what's open. Same thing with depth, and also what are the shapes within this sample, the different sounds that are in here, what sort of shapes do they have, and what can be a shape that I can use that can sort of fit a little bit better. So definitely, again, it comes with practice, but I think those are the sort of things that you should think about when you're trying to add in sounds into your beat. Let's jump into Swelly Swell's beat here. That was the swelly swell, swelly swell swell. Eric the Swell. What a swell guy. Whoa! What am I doing there? I think, did I miss a message here? Red Octane, speaking of random perks and whatnot, where do you get those perks and weird sounds from the funk video? Yes, just like you mentioned there, just years of collecting sounds, even just like going on to Splice. I said this like in my older overexplained video, just like I sign up for like a month, download a bunch of weird and wacky sounds, and just have a folder of like percussive sounds that I use. And yeah, just throwing them in. I think some of those also came from when I bought my machine. They give you like almost like 10,000 sounds that come with it. And just going through the library of sounds there. Yeah, just I just have a library of random sounds that I throw into my beats every once in a while. So instead of going for, you know, at times more typical percussive sounds like rim shots and shakers and whatnot, I'll reach for something a little bit more unique at times, just to fill up space in a little bit more of a unique way. 93 and a quarter studios. Hello, how's it going? Harmiter mentioned something interesting. To me, this makes a sample too recognizable. So I guess that's one of the things that a lot of people sort of fight back and forth about when it comes to sampling. Is that something that should be of value? Should you fight and push to make your sample unrecognizable? I think this goes to the category of like what producers value versus what just the normal typical listener values. I think most people just want to hear a good song, whereas we like to attribute more points to like a difficult attempt, almost like figure skating. If someone attempts to do something very difficult and something that's a little bit more like out there, we as producers like to award extra points. But at the end of the day, most people, the sort of common listener doesn't really value that as much as we do. So it goes to, who are you making music for? Is it to impress other producers, or is it just for everyone to listen to? I guess that's the big thing there. Some cool sounds. I like that one that was bouncing and reverberating sound. Yeah, something I definitely picked up on as well. Super spacey, feels like I'm on Mars trying to catch the drums, having a little bit difficulty with that. I would agree there. I'm afraid that's the issue with mine too. I always struggle with use this particular sample challenge. Yeah, that's I guess for me, I more so value what the beat sounds like in the end, even if it was a simple flip, just like NDE's. He just sort of went back and forth with those two chops, and I mean the beat itself sounded great to me, so that's what I personally value more, just because I want to move beyond that thing of like, let's do this to impress other producers. Once I got out of that mind frame and more focused on like, what do artists actually want, that's when things sort of came together for me, and I started actually being able to like work with artists at that point. It goes to what you value at the end of the day and what you want. So I'm pretty new to flipping samples. I just got that vaporwave feel. So what I'd say with this beat, for one, again, to the point of sampling, the simplicity of the sample is on point there. He sort of just, I believe it's just a loop fundamentally, not too excessive with the chopping, but he created a good sort of backing, a good framework, to the point of, I think Homie nicked that one additional, it sounded like a guitar on the sort of left side, had a lot of reverb and maybe delay on it. That felt like it fit very well with the sample. So really good job of, I don't believe that was a sound that was in the sample itself. So great job of adding it in and getting it to sound like it fit very flushly with the sample itself. What I would say is that I agree with the guys in the chat that the drum pattern felt a bit chaotic. I couldn't really catch the rhythm of what was trying to be built with that drum pattern. And if the intent here is to make something a little bit more spacey, like you mentioned, you want to make something a little bit more vaporwave, I'll be 100% sure. I'm not 100% familiar with that genre, but I'll make the assumption here that's supposed to be very ethereal and very spacey. What I find helps when I want to make that type of beat is minimizing the amount of percussive sounds and how much rhythmic components are in the beat. And at that point, you might feel like your beat becomes a little bit too minimal, a little bit too sparse. What can help at that point is to add, or just take your textures and make them take up more space by maybe adding some reverb onto your snare and like doing some bussing and just making all your sounds take up a little bit more room in the beat, so you can sort of counteract how minimal the drum pattern itself is. So if that's something that sort of led you to struggle with your drum pattern and create something that felt both full enough but minimal enough at the same time, that could be an approach that you use. Some low end in the beat would have felt good as well. This beat sort of felt like it was a sort of more rough idea than anything else. You did show some cool techniques, especially with that additional guitar that you added. That was really awesome. That makes it feel 100 times better. And yes, I handpicked most of the sounds outside the sample. So yeah, really great job there. I just think that hopefully if you sort of want to make a more ethereal type of beat, minimizing the amount of rhythmic sounds in your beat and just focusing on how much room they take up can be a good strategy to accomplish that. So yeah, I'm wondering why you didn't add a low end into the beat. I think that would have helped make the beat sound a lot more full as well. Heartmiter says, well, I want to take a cool sample and make it my own, not to impress anyone. Fair enough. Yeah, always fun to see how far you can push a sample and make it unique. That's definitely something that I do as well. It's just, for me, it feels fun to do that. So I hear what you guys are saying. Let's listen to Gigi's beat here. Gigi, what did you come up with? All right, that was Gigi's beat there. His flip of the sample. He says eep. The sample sounds nice pitched up like that. Ooh, nice flip, says Quato. I like it, fire. Yeah, I agree with you guys. I actually really like that sample flip. It sounded like I'm not 100% sure, but it sounded like you used multiple layers of the sample and you sort of sat them on top of each other. I really liked how you had this sort of more ethereal, spacey sound in the back, then you had your more upfront layer, and you sort of brought that spacey layer in and out throughout the beat. I love the faster BPM flip of it. I feel the drums could be louder though. Great bounce for sure, says Red Octane. I'm not sure what I'm aiming for. It kind of got away from me. I didn't get much time to mix it. Love the kicks or 808s. So yeah, great job on the sort of sampling approach here, just that sort of layered idea. That can be difficult to do, but it sounds like, I believe that's what you did with this beat, or it just might be using multiple different parts of the sample. Either way, I like what you did with the sample here. Great processing on the sample as well. I liked how it sounded pitched up, and it sounded like you used some additional, maybe some distortion on the main sample to really bring up some of those highs. And the way you sort of manipulated it really made it sound different from the original. I liked what you did with the drum pattern as well. To Red Octane's point, I thought that one of the things that sort of jumped out to me was that the velocity on some of the drum sounds could have been a little bit more detailed, and just it sounded like the hi-hats were at a consistent level. And so for me, it sounded like whenever I use more acoustic sounding drum samples, like the ones that you did here, playing with the velocity becomes a little bit more important, just because if the sounds themselves are sort of meant to sound a little bit more human instead of like more digital sounds like from an 808, TR-808 or something, being a little bit more detailed with the velocity of your drum sounds, and sort of maybe even adding ghost notes and whatnot, just adding that extra layer of detail into the drum pattern becomes a little bit more necessary. So I think that was something that could have been improved with this beat. But overall, I really liked the idea here. Yeah, so 2 samples over 2 layers. Can't even speak English right now. 2 sample layers overlapping and a marimba backing it up. So yeah, I really liked how you played around with which layer is in right now. You sort of ducked out the layer back and forth at times. So yeah, great job with that. I would say that the vocal sample at the end there, that sort of whining sound, some of the notes sounded a bit off. I don't think that was from the sample itself. I think the texture itself definitely could fit into the beat, but I think some of the notes that were actually in that sample, or whether you played it yourself, were a bit off at times. But overall, really great idea here. Like you mentioned, you just sort of squeezed it in at the nick of time. Maybe if you had a little bit more time, adding the being a little bit more detailed with the drums might have been something that you wanted to do. Nonetheless, really cool idea here, and kudos to you, Gigi. What I'm most excited about is hearing your guys' beats now, and like hearing your beats as you submit over time, over and over again. Because I mean, even some of the older members here will attest that like seeing the progress of what some of you guys have made has been very amazing. Very cool. So I'm excited to hear the progress that all you guys make as well. Let's jump into, well, let's just highlight the blank ones. Let's see what Soju Moju has for us. All right. Soju Moju with his beat Parallels. All right. The Moju of Soju. Let's see what you guys are saying here. Red Bunny sounds good. Super quiet. Love the synth bass though. Really unique flip. Bass sounds sick with that sample. This one's pretty great. Hell yeah. I love that bass line so much. This one has a virtue of being interesting in its own right, but it also sounds like there's a lot of space for vocals. The bridge breakdown was perfect. The drums are nuts. Hella spicy transitions, and yes, the bass line is great. Yeah, I really agree. It suits the sample really well. So with my takeaway with this beat, I really love the sample flip. It felt, I mean, if you showed me both the sample as well as this beat, I probably would not even hear that, you know, they're connected in any way. A lot of great work was done with adding the additional synths on top. They fit very, very well with this the sample. And I think you did a great job of picking out the sounds that fit with the sample and really getting them to sit very integrated with the sample itself. The flip, again, it made sense musically, which is really important. It did sound like you went a little bit more minimal compared to some of the other flips, and like got very finite with your chopping. But the most important thing here is that what you built makes sense musically. It wasn't overly complex just for the sake of it. You built a sort of short loop that, you know, it had a great progression to it. I love the bass, just like what everyone else mentioned in the chat. A really great, unique sort of texture there. I agree with you guys. I think it could fit, the vocals could fit perfectly. Great structure as well. It felt like a very deliberate structure to this beat, and it felt like there was a ride, there was a sort of up and down that sort of made sense, and it was very deliberate. Gigi says, I love this. It has a dark and melancholic. It's dark and melancholic at the same time. Transition and effects are on spot. So I agree with what you guys are saying. I think that a couple of things to point out. It felt like there was a little bit of presence missing in the high end. So I don't know if you guys like sort of got the same feeling that there was something missing somewhere in terms of the frequency spectrum. It sounded like, for one, the higher end was a little bit dead. Primarily because the drums were very, very quiet in this beat. I think if the drums were made a little bit more loud, especially the sort of hi-hats, that might have gone a long way in getting the high end to fill up, or be a little bit more complete. Even something as simple as adding a little bit more static or noise on the beat, and maybe peeling back how much of the sample was filtered, because it did sound like there was some filtration on the sample itself. I think those small little things kind of really help the beat feel a little bit more full, and yet it wouldn't have completely overconsumed the beat. I think there still would have been space for vocals, just because this beat was composed very, very well. Like I mentioned, all the pieces are here. Everything was very well put together. Very good job of integrating your own sounds with the sample. I think just those extra few steps in getting the beat to sound a little bit more complete, just in terms of its audibility, would have helped. So great job of piecing together a great beat here, for sure. I was feeling the same, not muddy, but missing something. Yeah, I think the beat is very clean. It has a lot of presence in the sort of lower end of the beat. It's just, from what it sounded like, the high end was missing a tiny bit. So just taking the extra few steps there could have helped. Nonetheless, though, good job, Soju Moju. I think that's probably one of my favorite beats that you've made so far. Really awesome, like cyberpunk-esque feeling, so that was cool. Yeah, we're zooming along so far. Let's see what Red Octane has for us. That was Corey Beats, Red Octane. Grout's in here. How's it going, Grout? He has a submission for us this time around, so I'll be interested to hear that. Red Octane has the sauce, says Deleg. The drums knock, Corey killing him. Damn, I could ride in a tank to this. Saucy. Nasty sample flip right here, says Quato. I'm bouncing my head at this one. The bass is sinister, says Gigi. Riding around in my 6.4. So I definitely agree. I really enjoyed a lot of this beat. The great drum work as usual. Corey Beats usually has great drum work. Fantastic job of the transitions. I think we talked about this maybe a month or two ago. A little bit more sort of work with the transitions. It definitely sounds like you made progress here. The sort of small details like the sort of reverse crash as well as the drum roll as well. It really helps transition from one section to another, just those small little details. So great job there. Cool use of the unique percussive sounds, just like you sort of pointed out. You have unique percussion sounds in your own back pocket, it sounds like, so that was awesome. What was I gonna say here? I really love the hook section, especially the way you flipped a sample there and you made it a lot more sort of melodic, and you brought in this sort of cool arpeggiating feel to the sample. That was really phenomenal. I think one thing that I want to point out, I think what could have helped this beat at times, during the verse section, I noticed that the low end of the sample at times sort of got in the way of the higher bass notes. It felt like there's a little bit of clashing and muddiness there. And even during the verse section, or say the hook section as well, I would have liked for that sort of arpeggiating synth to just be a little bit more colorful and just be a little bit more present. So it sounded like you used an EQ or a filter on the sample as a whole. I think just maybe taking what you sort of cut out and maybe shifting it towards a higher frequency spectrum, just so the bass notes don't clash with the lower end of the sample and you sort of have a little bit more brightness with the synth, especially during the hook. I think that could have made the beat feel a little bit more sort of complete and full and got rid of some of those small little things that got in the way. Obviously, I'm pointing out very small details here just because, as you guys heard, Corbin is a killer with the beats, so I'm getting very picky with the smaller details. This beat, just as a whole and as a concept, are really phenomenally done. So kudos to Corbin on that front. So yeah, I just wanted to pick out small little things there. Top of the list, top of the charts, says the swell. I want to make Corey Beats type beats. He's a killer, I'll tell you that much. And the progress that he's made in the last year has been fucking wild. If you guys heard, some of the newer guys, if you guys heard his beats from when he started to where he is now, it's night and day. It's crazy. Jay Fatal. Let's see what Jay Fatal. right, that was Jay Fatal's beat there with the fatality. Hamletor's in here. How's it going, Hamletor? This is nasty, says Quato. Oh yeah, this slaps. What is that little breathy percussive sample in there? I like it a lot. Again with the percussion, love it. Love the breakdown, so good. I recognize it but can't figure out where it's from. I'm not quite sure where that is from either. But yeah, I definitely agree with you guys. This is a great beat here. Great job of layering the samples and sort of just doing this. I think that's one of the reasons why I picked the sample as well. It has so many different unique cool instruments, and the great thing is they sit in very different spaces in the frequency spectrum. So you had that sort of plucked harp that sat in the sort of lower mid area, and then you had that sort of cool synth in the sort of more mid high area, and it just became a little bit more easy because of that separation, where you can just use an EQ and sort of filter out different sounds and use them like a sort of with a layering technique like a lot of guys did. So fantastic job on that front. Deleg says nice drums though. I agree. So I think that's definitely something Jay Fatal took advantage of with this beat, and a lot of you guys did with this sample as well. Just picking out or understanding that because there's so much separation with the sample and there's just so much openness, it just becomes so much more easy to make your own creation using all these sounds. And that's something that I always talk about, even in the course. This idea of like, if you choose a sound or a sample that is a little bit closer to like just any old preset in your VST, where you have the ability to take more control and manipulate the sample more, it just becomes a lot more easy to use that sound and texture with a lot more flexibility in any way that you want. So I think that's on display with this beat as well. There was so much to play with in the sample. Yeah, 100%. Really love the percussion. Honestly, there's not much I can criticize with this beat. It was very well done. I really loved it. Front to back, I mean, the structuring was great as well. It was very easy to understand what was the verse, what was the hook. The verse felt awesome. I really loved the sort of back and forth with the sample. Again, didn't get too crazy and made the thousands of chops. Just a phenomenal job of cutting the sample up and just building something that was just solid and well put together. I need to collab with that frog. What I would say is, one thing to point out, there was that one sample, there's that one part of the beat during the verse section where the sample was, I think one note was taken and put on loop throughout the entire verse section. Let's see here. So you can hear that consistent note playing. And I think that's a really smart thing to do if you want to fill up space in your beat. Just taking like a small little sound and just playing it a little bit more consistently. I will say though, pushing it back in the beat might have helped a bit, adding a little bit more reverb, just so it's not as sort of in your face. It almost sounded like a mosquito buzzing in a sense. Actually, one other thing, that I was just listening to a Jay Dilla song for like 4 hours yesterday on repeat, and one of the things that he did was he took a sound and instead of just playing it consistently throughout the entire verse section, he would sort of dip it in and out throughout the beat. And I think that could be something with this texture. It could have been a technique here where it fits perfectly. There's nothing wrong with the sound itself, but just how consistent it is, and there's how little variation there is with it, and how prominent it is. Just sort of got in the way, in my opinion, a little bit. So even if you just, pushed it back with a reverb, or if you wanted to just use volume modulation and control just how loud and quiet it gets throughout the entire verse section, bring it in and out, that could have been an idea. Again, just a small little nitpick there that you can sort of think about. Overall though, just a great beat here. Definitely love that beat. What are you guys saying here? I need to start hearing some worse beats or I'm gonna be terrified to submit. Don't worry. Nick says still some bad left in there. All right, let's jump into Zero's beat next. All right, that was Zero's beat there. Let me just finish writing here. So let's see what you guys are saying. You guys are still laughing it up. I like that vocal, says Quato. Definitely agree. We've all had garbage beats at one point, and you're looking to improve. No shame in getting criticism. That's the way to get better. Yeah, that's a big hump to get over for sure. You know, when you first start making beats especially, it feels like an attack on your sort of whole entire life when someone criticizes your beats. But, you know, one thing that I've learned is, for one, not everyone's going to like your beat, no matter how good it is. There are songs that have like billions of plays on Spotify, and you know, not everyone's going to like that. So that's one thing that you can sort of keep in your back pocket. But as well, you know, you sort of, one of the things, this is going to sound very philosophical, so let's just take a tangent here. I think one of the things that's really helped me the most in life is my ability to sort of really look at the sort of uglier sides of my own sort of pathway in my own life, and really start to identify what the problem areas are, just so I can start to fix them. Because if you never really want to look at how bad things are right now, you know, it's going to be very difficult to actually gauge whether you make progress. Just to tell a quick little story here. I had a friend who was somewhat overweight, and he was always talking about, man, I need to start going on a diet, I need to start losing some of this weight. And I was like, yeah, that's phenomenal, man. And then I think it's like a very good idea for him to do. And then one day he was like, all right, I'm going to start this week. I just started my diet. I'm going to cut down. It's going to work. And I was like, all right, that's awesome. So what do you weigh right now? Did you check what your weight is on the scale? Then he was like, no way, man. I can't even bother looking at where I am right now. And I knew right then, I was like, okay, he's going to get off this diet in like 2 weeks. And sure enough, he did, because he was just so unwilling to look at where he actually was right now, that showed me personally that he did not have a sort of committedness to actually wanting to improve. Because to sort of actually seek out improvement, you really need to look at where you are now and really sort of accept where you are. And once you start, that's the starting point for actually progressing. Very big tangent there, but I do believe that that sort of skill and that willingness to really accept where you are right now, no matter how much you might dislike it, is the sort of very first step to improving. So that's just my little story there. Completely off the rails, but yeah, nice use of the vocal. And this, I didn't think I even reviewed this beat yet, so sorry about that. This is getting me in the feels, about to shed a tear. This is smooth. I wasn't expecting to drop that start. The vocal sample is bang on. Yeah, you can't live in the feedback loop like so many people do. Have to look at stuff from all angles and see what the issues are. Yeah, for sure. It's a very difficult thing to know how much feedback is too much or too little. But I think the sort of willingness to just be a little bit more open and not sort of completely shut down and get super defensive or like completely ignorant of where you are right now that's not a solution either. So with this beat though, I think for one, great job of adding your own sounds onto the beat as well with that vocal sample as well as some of the instrumentation work. I'm actually very, very surprised at how well you guys are doing with adding your own sounds into your samples. That's something that I struggle with for so long. And it was only until like I really formulated that conception of like what are the different characteristics of sounds and how does that fit into the sound that you're trying, or the song that you're trying to add it into. That's when things started to click. So hopefully that's also what's helping you guys, because you guys are doing a phenomenal job of adding sounds into your beat. Learning is always painful. Yeah, I think one thing that was very illuminating is that like all learning is painful, because the very first step to be open to learn is to admit that you might be wrong. And so many people, even for that first step of admitting that you might be wrong, that's very, very, that itself can block a lot of learning. And I'll say that even for me, like for a very long time, I was very self-conscious and very insecure about like my own music, for example. And so if I saw like a tutorial pop up on YouTube of like how to do this or how to do that, I would instantly be like, I'm not going to bother. I'm just not going to bother like watching that video or listening to that, just because the first step of me watching that video and wanting to learn is to admit that I might not be right and I might, have some things wrong. And for a very long time, I think that's what slowed my progress more than I sort of probably it should have, because for a very long time I was just very closed off to new learning because I didn't like the idea of admitting that I was wrong. Whereas now, there are definitely lots of things that I don't know about music production. It's one of the reasons why you guys never catch me talking about like going in depth about mixing and mastering or vocal recording or things like that. Those are things that I don't have much experience in, and I would be completely open to learning more and more. I think like a few weeks ago, one of you guys sent me, I can't remember who it was exactly, sent me like, we were talking about mastering and like true peak output and how the FL limiter isn't actually showing the actual true peaks. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I had no idea at all. But I think me from like 10 years ago would have been like, I don't want to listen to this guy, and I'd probably run away or something. So yeah, I definitely agree that learning is painful. I guess I mean feedback loop in terms of only taking in information of the things you align with. Yeah. So just like reconfirming things that you believe to be true, definitely not a good space to be in, even outside of music. Well, that's life in general, I think. Also taking the failures along the way as opportunities to learn rather than reasons to quit. 100%. 100%. I'll even say that for this latest course launch, I made a big mistake at the very beginning. So I was going to enter something into the marketing section that I'll do after this stream. But I made a big mistake with the website at the very beginning of the launch, and it led to a lot of people not wanting to sign up. And so rather than saying, okay, this is a failure, I suck, and just completely shutting down, I sort of took that failure to what the homie Nick mentioned. I took that failure and I sort of looked at that as an opportunity to learn and figure out what I did wrong. And so like I was up until like midnight on Monday making these adjustments, changing the site, and that really made a huge difference. I was able to sort of claw back and had a successful launch at the end, which I'll share some numbers and some of the insights after the stream in the marketing section. But yeah, 100%, like that failure taught me so much just in that one night of like what I should have done, what are some things I did wrong there. So definitely agree with you there. Yeah, you don't want to live in an echo chamber, 100%. Oh, thank you very much, Swell. Learning is painful, but staying still in a vacuum is even more painful. Yeah, because right when you step out into the real world, you'll realize that like the stuff that you learn in a vacuum, it might not apply in the actual real world environment, for sure. The first step in being really good at something is being pretty bad at it. And the arts talented just equals hardworking for the most part. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I really like about even my own journey. I sucked really bad at the beginning. And a lot of people sort of look at like prodigies and like naturally gifted people and think that's so unfair, that sucks, that person, they're so good, I shouldn't even bother. But like I feel even just in my experience, I sucked so bad, and I was still able to like really work hard and still have some good successes along the way. So yeah, hopefully that's the message to you guys of just like, even if you start at a really low point and you see all these really gifted people that you think is natural gifts around you, that doesn't really equate to whether or not that person will succeed. There's just a lot more factors outside of that. I'm the opposite side. I spend more time learning instead of doing. I probably watch all the YouTube videos out there about production, mixing, and mastering instead of producing. Yeah, that could be a trap as well. It still baffles me about how many coworkers I have that live in a vacuum echo chamber and still bring it to the real world and are unwilling to learn. Yeah, that's definitely a problem that we have nowadays. I just keep holding off on Zero's review here. He's probably sitting there waiting for me to actually review his beat. So I'll just say about this beat. Yeah, so I just started saying, great job of adding your own sounds into this beat. I really loved it's impressive you guys' ability to do so. I think with this beat specifically, Zero, I think bringing up the drums would have helped a little bit more. The drums were very they're a little bit too quiet, I felt. And some EQing on the sample would have helped as well. I noticed that there's some percussive sounds that you added into this beat, and while they did fit well, I think they sat in a very low space, which again isn't inherently a problem, but it felt like a lot of the sample also sat in that space. So either moving some of those sounds to a different frequency space just to open up a little bit more room, or just really being a little bit more constricted with the sample. I would probably say maybe even moving the percussive sounds into a different frequency space would have been a better idea. But a little bit more EQ control on the sort of sounds, that would have been nice. Or sorry, frequency control on the different sounds would have opened up a little bit more. And bring up the drums would have helped the beat sound a little bit more complete. But nonetheless, yeah, really great job of layering your own sounds into this beat and doing so in a very fluid way. Most prodigies are actually people whose environment in one way or another allowed them to grow and learn early in ways that other people couldn't. People know about the 10,000 hour rule, the 1,000 hour rule. Is that something Hamlet or just made up? Yeah, I think the homie Nick, you mentioned that. I think one of the points in that book was about, like, he has an example of hockey and how most NHL players, I think they were born in either like January or February, or like the first quarter of the year, because that's when like hockey season opens for kids. And so the kids they're just a little bit more big, a little bit more developed because they were born like 9 months earlier than the kid. And then I was born in like December, let's say, that kid's going to get like pummeled on the ice because he's just a little bit more small. And because those kids are born a little bit earlier, they end up just being a little bit more better and developing more and more and just have more success. And so, yeah, just such a really cool idea for sure. All right, let's jump into Harmiter's beat next. All right, that was Self-Guidance by Harmiter. Let's see here. Let's see what the chat is saying. I was gonna say, show us the shortcut, bro. What shortcut are we alluding to? 40% in March through, yeah. So that's the hockey stats of how many people in the NHL are born in those months, which is pretty amazing. Crazy snares. This is chill. Whoa, I like that effect on the sample. What is that? Really good, says Red Bunny. The Dunning-Kruger effect. Cool use of the sample. Love the vibe of this. So chill. The delay on the snare is dope for sure. I'm not into chill beats, but that's really good. Congrats, says Red Bunny. So yeah, with this beat, Harmiter, I would say one of my favorites from you for sure. This is a phenomenal beat. Love the design as a whole. This is something that I talked about. Harmiter, for those that don't know, he won the competition that we had in December. Definitely very close. We had some other potential winners in this chat as well, but the 10,000 hour rule shortcut. So yeah, I think one of the things I loved about Harmiter's beat from that competition was just elegant design, not getting too over the top with adding tons of sounds, just being very deliberate with the sounds that are used and using them very well. And I think this beat is yet another example of that, of just being very smart with the design of the beat and like very concise and very deliberate with sound selection and the way he uses it just to fill up so much room in the beat, but do so in just such a unique and interesting way. Like you guys mentioned with like the delay on the snare and the sort of manipulation of the sample. Fantastic job there. Great smart use of like noise in the high end, because it sounded like you wanted to make a little bit more of a sort of low fidelity beat that sounds a bit more rough, but you were able to use some of the smaller techniques to make the beat still sound complete. Great arrangement ideas as well. This felt like a phenomenal standalone song. I know this is something that you have an interest in making more standalone music that isn't necessarily conventional in that it fits for like an artist, whatnot. And so I think you did a phenomenal job of just making a great standalone song here. And to what I remember the beat that you submitted for the last competition, one of the things that I sort of picked apart there was that that submission just had a sort of lack of a consistent theme. It was almost like 3 different songs in one, and it felt a little bit confusing in terms of like, I'm not sure what you're trying to build there and what part I should sort of cover and sort of criticize, because that's fundamentally what I'm doing here. I think you did a phenomenal job here just creating a very consistent theme with this song. It didn't feel like it jumped around into like 3 different ideas in one and you tried to like sort of force anything. You had one concise idea, one consistent idea and theme to this song, and you executed it throughout the entire song, and it was just simply beautiful. So I have nothing negative to say about this beat at all, really. I think this was phenomenally done. So good job to Harmiter. I'm not sure whether he's here or he left to work or something, but if he watches this replay, kudos to Harmiter on that one. I couldn't figure out how to download the sample from YouTube to my DAW. There are some possibly illegal ways that I will not condone officially on stream, but there are ways. I'll let someone else let you know. I do love a greatly executed drum delay on the snare, so chill but kept interesting with every bar. Yeah, just such small, cool, unique details in this beat that really made it so much more unconventional, but yet still interesting and still made sense as well, which is hard to do when you're trying to be a little bit more experimental. Vito, let's see what you got. All right, well, Vito linked his page as a whole. I'm not sure what's going on here. I'll assume, is it challenge 2 or challenge 16 days ago? That's temporally impossible that this is the actual submission. So challenge 2 is probably it. All right, that was Vito's beat there. Vito. Beat is hard, says Quato. This is Grimy. Chill Jimmy's in here. How's it going? Now this is some funk, all right. The bass sounds weird, says Red Bunny. Love this. This is a different direction of the sample than we've heard. This is hard. You know, I love darker, grimy beats. Feeling this for sure. Could see Godamus. I'm not sure. I sound like an old loser right now. I don't know who that is. It's like I'm on a mission. Yeah, with Sharp Vision. Bad food poisoning. If I can get home in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to try to load my beat. Sorry to hear that, man. No rush at all. If you just want to DM me your beat, don't like hurry and like get into another car crash or something, then go right back to the ER. You can just DM me your beat and I'll give you some feedback one-on-one if you just want to relax. This gives me the Run the Jewels-ish vibe, but slightly chiller. So what I will say with this beat, great drum work for sure. I really love the drum programming in this. The way the sample was used, it sat in the sort of low mid space, and that sort of built a good base for the beat. That layer underneath really worked well. I think though with this beat, the layers that were built on top of that sort of base of the sample just didn't really work. He's been around since 2011 now. I feel out of the loop now. Yeah, so the layer on top of the sample sort of didn't really work. I'm trying to figure out why. I think one of the reasons is because the sample, that sort of base layer, sat in the low mid area, and these sort of that piercing stabby noise especially, that sat in a very higher frequency. I think maybe the problem is that there was just nothing in between. It was just sort of this really piercing stabby horn sound almost. I'm gonna make the assumption here that you created that by pitching the sample up. Maybe you pitched that sample or the sort of synth and maybe added a lot of distortion onto it. Not 100% sure, but I think the layer that sat on top of the bass didn't really work. It might have been a good idea to instead, just add your own sounds into the beat rather than sort of forcing samples from the sounds from the sample instead. So I think, yeah, there's a good fundamental bass with this beat. Again, the drum work is great, and I really like the structure of the beat in that you sort of create a verse hook. So I think that was done very well. It's that sort of layer of sounds that sat on top, I think just didn't quite fit just because they were just so removed from everything else in the beat. It almost sat like a layer on top of the beat that wasn't really integrated just because there was that sort of gap missing in frequency. I think that might be the problem here. Yeah, Sharp, just DM me the beat. It's all good. All right, let's keep chugging along here. Let's listen to Grout's beat next. All right, that was the Groutmeister himself with his beat Organic. A rare grout sighting. I think that's the third submission that you've had. I missed a bit at the top here. Might have overmixed this one and messed with it too much. Obsessed over it this time and had who knows how many revisions. Using every part of the animal. Admirable. This would donk in the whip. Donk in the whip. The way you make sounds from samples blow my mind. Red Bunny, I miss a bit of high end. Am I wrong? Wow, says Pseudo. Listening to this, what? Listen to this with a Tesla on autopilot, getting dome. What a naughty boy. Would have been funny if you slapped it into a blue screen. That would not have been funny. I've been getting blue screens on my computer for a few months back, and I was getting quite scared. I just randomly went away. I don't know what the hell that was all about. Insane manipulation. Yeah, Edison has a wacky EQ that you can box off the frequencies you want from the sound. Oh, interesting. I didn't even know about that. We're all learning today. Even though it is painful, we are all learning. So yeah, I think I agree with everyone in the chat. Just amazing sound design here. Grout's known for really pushing samples and sounds and really creating something unique and completely different from them. And I think this is a spot on example of that. Just such unique sound design to create such interesting parts in the beat. I think with this beat, all the pieces are here. I think this is a very complete sounding beat. Grout, in terms of the composition, Grout always mentioned that you're afraid that your kicks were a bit too high. I don't think that's a problem here. You built all the pieces, everything was fitting very well. You did something smart where you played with stereo presence as well. It sounded like you used some of the harp or the plucked sounds and you panned them in terms of the stereo presence just to bring a little bit more width to the beat, and I thought that was a really cool idea. To Red Bunny's point, he mentioned that something's missing. He thought it might be something in the high end. I think just volume control could have been something to help this beat a little bit. It sounded like the main sound that sort of sits in the middle of the beat could have just been brought up a tiny bit, and I think that might have just been enough. Just because you did a lot of great work with the stereo presence and you had sort of louder sounds on the left and right channel, but it felt like something that I mentioned in the course is that typically with like hip hop beats, even though this might not be considered a hip hop beat, there's typically a good presence in the sort of middle of the beat and a lot of presence in the sort of more mono areas. And I think that's true sort of somewhat across the board, where you want to make sure the sounds that are more in the middle of the beat take up a little bit more space. I think just bumping up the sounds that sit more in the middle section of the sort of stereo presence, which would be that sort of main loop that you built, could have made the beat just feel a little bit more full. But like I mentioned, compositionally, all the pieces are here. You did a good job of creating a awesome drum pattern. The bass pattern was perfect as well. I really, really loved the more minimal parts of the beat when you used that sort of big synth bass. That sounded awesome. So yeah, all the pieces are here. Everything was composed very well. I think the only thing that you might have sort of you wanted to sort of overmix it, and maybe you detected that something was sort of missing in the beat. I think from the sounds of it, just the sort of middle section and the stereo presence could have been brought up just to bring a little bit more presence and body to the beat. And the sounds a little bit more stereo, make them a little bit more secondary, and I think the beat would have just sounded a little bit more full. But yeah, great job. I really love hearing the crazy out there sound design that you usually do, and hopefully this is the beginning of more grout beats. I think everyone in the chat would agree with that. All right, so we got 5 beats left. Let's jump right in. Nicked, let's see what you got.
It's puzzling. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this before. We're all writing practical definition of the words, foolproof and incapable of error. a very nice rendering, Dave.
Dave?
I think you've improved a great deal.
Is that from 2001? That picture? Is that where Dave is from? Or is that from Alien? I don't know. Let's see here. This is a different direction than I was expecting. I like the bass. Is that a double bass sample? Sounds like something Flying Lotus. So cool. That bass is a little bit Thundercat-esque in how much texture it had. It's an 808 from Serum. Spent a good bit of time on the bass line, so thanks. Jazzy says Quato. Sounds sick, space jazz. So with this beat here, I think me and Nick talked on the side a bit. I think Nick's focus is more compositional. I think you mentioned that you're not very experienced with sampling. So yeah, my takeaway with this beat is that this is something that I see a lot with like newer producers, or sorry, producers who are newer to sampling, where you sort of just build a drum loop that sounds good and is very consistent, and then the sort of process of building this sort of sampled area is just constantly just triggering seemingly random chops. And this is something I talked about in a video that I put on YouTube a while ago, where just there's a sort of lack of a progression or a loop here. It felt like a sort of random, chaotic, overly sort of complicated arrangement of different chops. So I just would have liked a little bit more simplification, to the point that I made in the chorus. Complex is not better. At times, just being a little bit more simple and a little bit more deliberate with just building a very easy, simple progression. You probably heard it in a lot of the other beats that we've heard. You know, some of them are just only 2 chops from the sample, just repeated over and over again. And I know your strength is sort of more complex composition and building out like very sort of lush loops. So that could have been a strategy where you just build something very simple with a sample, and then you sort of build something a little bit more complex on top of that with your own instrumentation. So yeah, I think that's something to sort of go forward when it comes to like more sample oriented challenges, just because I've heard your beats and you're obviously skillful when it comes to programming your own patterns and creating your own compositions. But when it comes to sampling, one of the strategies that you can use going forward is just not treating your sample as if it has to be super complicated, starting off with a little bit more of a simplicity and building on top of it using your own sounds if you'd like. Because I felt that's the thing that sort of harmed this beat the most, which is didn't really feel like there was a sort of underlying progression. I didn't really sort of understand what the beat was trying to get across and convey, emotionally speaking, just because it was seemingly a sort of random assortment of notes rather than just like a good solid progression that was built with the sample. Hopefully that makes sense there. It felt that way because it was, for the most part, a random assortment of chops. Yeah, so you know, just like when you build a beat and you sort of grab that first sound and you build a very simple chord progression that might be just 4 chords, and that's how you start your beat. Using your sample in that very same way can be a great strategy. So never feel like overcomplication and just being completely balls to the wall with how much chops you make is going to be the way to quality. So yeah. All right. Let's keep on keeping on. The Calver. Let's see what the Calver has for us. right, that was Calver's beat there. So using the sample more for atmosphere or as the backbone of the track and building the melodies from other ingredients. So obviously there's like multiple ways to skin a cat. I don't want to like confine you to say this is the only way that you can use a sample. My point was more so trying to dissuade you of the idea always that the more complex the better, that you should always strive for adding more, and that's the way to approach every single instrument that you have in your beat, and always try to complicate every single thing. My point was just more so don't be afraid to be simple, and just using the sample in a very simplistic way, just like Red Octane mentioned. I often just chop a 2-bar chunk of the sample. That's completely fine. So just don't feel like you have to do as much as you can in order to get a sound or a beat to sound good. Again, the idea of good design is to try to get your message across with the least amount of work or effort, as they say. And I think that's how you can treat sampling as well. Quato, this is cool. Transition could have been a little bit smoother, wavy though. I like the groove on this one. My ear wants a thicker lower end. It's a good point. Not sure how I feel about the vocal lick on the breakdown. Kick and hat maybe a bit too quiet when the main sample is over it. Love the flip though. Good bounce for sure. I like it here. Snare 2 could cut through a little bit more mono, like the bounce and the vibe, but I miss these sub frequencies. So yeah, you guys have a good point about the sub frequencies. I didn't even pick up on that really. My takeaway, I really love the drum programming. Is very Dilla-esque. It has a nice bounce to it. There's also Dilla-esque in that there's like sort of seemingly random dropouts throughout the beat. I really like that. The bass that you added, as well as the pad, really integrated well with the beat as a whole. So the sounds that you chose, I really enjoyed. To the chat's point, I did notice that once his own bass came in, it maybe sounded a little bit more full. But to your point, it still did lack a low end during those sections that sound wasn't in the beat. So just boosting the lower end of the sample itself could have helped, but overall, like you guys said, also smoother transitions would have been nice, and even just playing around with the complexity of the rhythms as well, or just adding some syncopation. This beat, I mean, the drums are programmed very well. The bass line was very bouncy, but everything in the beat was very consistent throughout the entire beat. Creating a little bit of variation just with the rhythms of your sounds. At times maybe just play with an additional snare here or there, create a snare roll, or maybe even take that bass pattern that you built and shift to when the notes play here and there. That could have been enough to just add a little bit of sort of something to break up a little bit of the monotony with the overall structure of the beat. I do think it's a very well put together beat though. This is the first beat I've heard from you, obviously. Great starting point, really interesting techniques, especially the drum programming. That was something that's very hard to do, to get that sort of particular bounce, and I think you achieved it very well. So yeah, I think a very great start for Calver. I think just paying a little bit more attention to, as the chat said, the low end. Obviously, I'm not going to sort of make the judgment that that's how all of your beats are going to sound. I'm interested to see how your beats sound going forward, but nonetheless, very promising start. I'm going to be interested to hear what your next beat sounds like. So let's listen to Hamletor's beat next. right, that was Hamletor's beat there. Red Octane, I'll see you later. Hamletor says, sorry, I was very busy at work these 2 past weeks and don't have time to polish it or properly mix it. So yeah, I think with the beat that you made here, Hamletor, a lot of the times you like to make lo-fi beats. This sounds like a little bit more of a traditional boom bap type of beat. But to your point here, the mix was a bit off in terms of just merely bringing up the drums would have been nice, as well as the sort of bass line in the low end. It did sound like you programmed a really cool bass line down there. I really love this sort of bouncy, it almost felt like a Pete Rock type of bass line. I think that was really cool and very well done. I think just bring up the volume of that plus the drums would have been nice. But I think the big thing with this beat, like the lo-fi feel, the hats have a little ting to them. I think the big thing with this beat though, a little bit disjointed in the structure, where partway through it sounded like you pitched the entire beat down maybe 1 or 2 semitones. Yeah, it's very disjointed, that technique. Just to create an entire sort of pitch shift in the entire beat partway through. It sounded like that's what you wanted to do to create variation in this beat. And so I think going forward, what I would like for you to practice, Hamletor, is adding sounds into your beat and doing so that in a way that they actually fit. I'm curious as to whether that was why you sort of did that approach with the structure, where you felt like you really struggled with adding sounds that fit into the beat, and so you sort of used this other means of creating variation, that you sort of pitch shifted the entire beat, and it just felt a little bit disjointed. But yeah, so Aquato says this could have used a little more variation, feels like it wants to take off but never quite gets there. So yeah, I think adding sounds into your beat and sort of playing around with when sounds come in and come out can really help you control how much variation, and to Quato's point, getting your beat to sort of take off and be higher energy and then dip back into like a verse section. So that's going to be a very important skill to sort of start to practice. So I think going forward, that's what I would hope to see you practice a bit more, how to add sounds into your beat that actually work. So we got Sunny Says next. Let's see what Sunny's got.
No, try not. Do or do not. Do it.
All right, that was Sunny Says beat there. Interesting beat. Hamletor, I mostly just changed the order of the chops and saw that it made a key change, so I just changed the key. Oh, okay. So I just felt like a very disjointed structure because of that technique. Yeah, I can't really think of a beat that, off the top of my head, that does that a little bit more successfully. I'll have to think about that. The chorus part is groovy, says Quato. Mim Express is getting some adverts from SoundCloud comments. Yeah, I've seen that like on every beat so far almost. That's spam. So with this beat, Sunny says, I think it sort of took me half of the beat to sort of figure out what you're trying to do here. And from what I could sort of get a feeling of, Chill Jimmy says chorus is hard as F. I definitely agree. I really loved when the chorus came in, but I think this beat sort of lacked much depth to it. All the sounds were very dry and very sort of upfront. If I'm being 100 if I am being 100, some of the samples could have been arranged a little bit more rhythmically. Enjoyed that. So yeah, I think the big culprit here was just the depth control. It sounded like every sound was a little bit more upfront, and there wasn't anything that was a little bit more sort of sitting in the background. I think even just, it doesn't have to come from the sample, even just throwing like a pad in just to create some sort of level of consistency and some level of depth to the beat as well could have helped. Again, the chorus is really well done, and halfway through I figured out, I think, what your beat was trying to do. And I think for that idea to work, there needs to be a little bit more ethereal sounds and a little bit more layers that are just create a better sense of depth, because this beat sounded a little bit incomplete just because you're going for a more spacey feel to the beat without the space, without the use of all the space that you have. So it ends up sounding a little bit one-dimensional. So yeah, just taking some of those layers that you have here, adding a little bit more reverb, or even just throwing in like a pad in the back could have definitely helped this beat. SoundCloud has mad spam bots. I wonder, is SoundCloud the place to post your music still? Because I feel like I used to use SoundCloud like maybe 5 years ago, but the UI is just so clunky and junk. Like, I see no reason why people don't use like Spotify or something instead to post their music up. Obviously, you have to pay for that, but I guess SoundCloud's a little bit more like, hey, I'll just post some shit up, let's see what happens type of thing. Whereas Spotify feels like, I need to make this an official release. Yeah, I don't know. But I do agree that SoundCloud is somewhat of a cesspool nowadays. Mixter Mom's last. Let's see what Mixter Mom has for us. Drinking. All right, that was a Mixter Mom's beat there. Let's see what you guys are saying here. Okay, wow. Okay. Now this is fire. I love Mixter Mom's production, really fire beats, and I love this one. Damn, that's a heater. Sounds like we're in the club. I definitely agree. I think this is probably my favorite thing Mixter Mom's made so far. They're known just for the insane sort of manipulation of sounds and just creating such an original backing to like every single beat. One of the things that Mixer Mom struggled with before. This is giving me heavy Space Ghost perp funky vibes. Yeah, it's definitely what I feel with this. Very lo-fi, sort of down south, very funk-esque. Gigi says the headline track of the evening. That's very big praise. Definitely, we had a lot of phenomenal beats. But yeah, this is probably my favorite thing that Mixer Mom's made. Just such a unique backing to that beat. The way that the sample was used here. One of the things that I'm often guilty of is just like, okay, I have a sample, I'm gonna start playing the sample right at the one and build like a loop that starts there. It sounded like Mixer Mom used the sample to sort of come in and out a little bit after the downbeat on the one. Just such a unique, cool approach. I never think of doing that, and I just love the way that that was done. The manipulation of the sample as well to build some sort of, I don't know how you explain it. It sounded just so like the pitched up piano, I think. Awesome. Just through and through awesome. But yeah, like I was gonna say, Mixer Mom before used to struggle with like getting sounds to the right levels, filling up enough space. I think at the very last challenge, there's like a little bit missing in the high end. That's what I pointed out. Through and through, I think this is just a phenomenally well put together beat. All the spaces were taken up. Great composition. Very unique flip. A little bit random at one point. You had that sort of sample of like the mom scolding a kid or something. That was a bit wacky, but nonetheless, it's just a small little thing there. Just such a cool ass beat. I have nothing really to point out with your beat here, Mixer Mom. I'm probably gonna listen to that beat once again once the stream is off, because that was a fun track to listen to. Yeah, that's it, guys. So that's this stream. We'll do this again in 2 weeks. Hopefully you guys have learned a lot and had fun here. Even when your guys' beats, you're not listening to your own beats, you're hearing other people's beats. Hopefully it gives you like ideas of like things that I point out and what the other people in the chat point out in terms of what they can like what certain beats are missing and what to sort of hear when you're making a beat that might sound similar to that. So yeah, awesome job there. Awesome job to all of you guys. Thank you for submitting, and hopefully I see you again in 2 weeks. And yeah, that's all I got to say. Bye bye. Later.